Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's 26 Minutes webinar about powering your data center. We all know that having consistent power to your data center is expected in today's always-on society until a local outage, delivery issue, or disaster interrupts that resource. Today, we have Daniel Stewart and Andrew Smith, Senior Business Transformation Engineers, to feature some solutions around smart power, backup, and monitoring that are showcased in our BTC, specifically from vendors Eaton, Panduit, APC Schneider Electric, Cables to Go, and Buddy. At this time, I'll pass it over to Andrew, who will get us started. Andrew?
Thank you very much, Lauren. So if you're not familiar with the Business Transformation Center, or if you are, you know that typically we've been highlighting things in the verticals we built out in education, retail, and healthcare. But we want to remind you that's not the only thing. We still have our data center, and it's really critical to a lot of the other things that we do. All right, just like any other front-end solution, it needs the stuff running in the back. A lot of the foundational Business Transformation Center vendor partners really started with a data center focus and have branched out into other areas as well. But a lot of the new vendors that we've brought on have a very significant data center focus, or they've really got opportunities in data center that you may not necessarily have known about. So I want to give you a little background on where we're coming from. We're going to give you a real-life story that we had to deal with and use that as kind of the springboard to talk about some of the solutions that we're highlighting at this point. So I'm going to give you a little background about what we've got right now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dan to talk a little bit about the experience that we ran into. So we have a data center UPS. It is a Symetra PX 8K by APC Schneider Electric. We have the benefit of a campus-wide generator. Okay, distribution panel in front of that UPS, and from there it goes out into breaker panels and load sensors, and we've got circuits right down to the rack. Okay, all of those circuits are single phase. That was the way we did our initial build out. And really that breaker panel that's right after that PDU is kind of where the story really begins. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to talk a little bit about what happened.
Thanks, Andy. So really, this is the catalyst for why this topic came up in this series, was kind of looking at something that was an event that happened to us, actually, where we were looking at a solution, and we found out that when someone was very diligent, they wanted to come in and work on the weekends. And as they so happened, they wanted to do some work while they were here. They saw that we had some power issues. And as we investigated where these faults were, we found some very interesting things that, we didn't really, either prepare for or think were something that was going to happen with the level of power redundancy and solution building that we have within our data center. What happens is, in this solution, while we have PDUs and UPSs and looking at the complete campus-based power, the power circuits that actually in the main breaker ended up tripping, not the individual circuits, but the main breaker itself was actually tripped. And what happened was I took down one of our rows of compute and networking equipment that was instrumental as our main gateway to the internet and a lot of the core functionality that we do have running through that section of the environment. So while we had battery backups, while we had a PDU solution that was going to our power grid, there was changes and environmental features that happened in our solution that caused actually the entire breaker to trip, which in by itself actually had a catastrophic effect on the infrastructure that we are running internally. So if you go to the next slide. Why did that happen? We try to look for, not finger pointing, but looking at causes. Why could this happen? What can we do to remediate that coming in the future? And thankfully, we actually caught it ahead of the work week, because that could spend a lot of time bringing up servers again, bringing up the network, doing all the infrastructure troubleshooting, let alone making sure that the power as we turn things back on, it was just not going to happen again, because obviously the power we had running was pulling from the circuits that we had, and if we turned everything back on in the same manner and fashion, I'm probably going to have an issue where that power was going to have an outage once more. So we looked at it and said, well, over the time that our data center is, up and running, we've had moves and changes. When network equipment comes in, new servers come in, and as we look to evolve our infrastructure to bring, latest solutions and elements from our supporting vendors to give our demonstrations and trainings to our partners, we cabled it up. We provided the power connectors, and there's space on the PDU, which means there's cables and power available to connect things up. But at the same time, it actually ended up unbalancing our network in the data center, our power in the data center altogether. And again, we have those two rows of equipment where, as we were making moves and changes, we were turning things on, we were adding more and more devices, more and more power-hungry equipment, things ended up just becoming unbalanced. And we weren't doing and didn't see any issue because the lights are on, the power's on, everything's turned on and happy. So by not having a monitoring system or proactively looking at how our changes were going to have a impact on the power that we were looking at, really over time gradually, caused that panel to result in overload and actually have something happen. So as we troubleshot our environment, we looked at our cables, we looked at our PDUs, looked at our UPSs, and to us, everything seemed like it was in proper order. Nothing really seemed out of, sorts when it came to redundancy and power connections. So we brought in a contractor to review and rewire to make sure that at the panel, why wasn't it the circuit breakers? Why did the entire panel go? That in the back, we had to look at how to redistribute those loads, how to look at our current usage better. And in the short term, that solved the problem. We got our systems on a more consistent distribution in the actual circuit. We took a stock of our batteries and backup from a UPS and PDU standpoint to make sure if there was a failure, we had the proper run time to be looking at powering those things down. But, weekends happened. And in this case, if something happened, the batteries wouldn't have caught it, and we want to go back through and make sure how can we proactively guard ourselves against these issues. So from that initial journey that we went through and dealt with, moved us into looking at things a little bit differently, and how can we reduce future risks by making proper investments and sharing those best practices with you all today.
And thanks, Dan. And I'm going to go through some of the things that we did, some of the things that we're in process of still doing, and bring in a couple of other ideas and thoughts as well. So the timing happened to work out perfect for us from the standpoint that Eaton had recently been onboarded with Business Transformation Center and was looking for something they could help us out with. All right, so one of the first things that we did is we went through and added some in-rack UPSs. Yes, we have a data center UPS, but we also have city power run out to a lot of the racks, so we dropped some in-rack UPSs in place. And then Eaton also provide us with color-coded PDUs. And yeah, it is pretty colorful, but it is also extremely useful. The shot of that rack is one of the racks where we had one of those failures. The blue PDU goes to our Eaton UPS in that rack. Red one goes to our data center UPS. We've got some color-coded cables from Cables to Go, C2G, which is part of Legrand, and that makes it extremely easy to see what's plugged in where. So literally, you can look at a piece of equipment, see that is dual home, one to each power side, and that really gives us some flexibility. So now even if we need to do something on the data center UPS, we can keep a lot of our core functionality up and running. Okay, not all of those cables obviously are color-coded. That's because there's a bunch of Cisco equipment in that rack, which means that there's C15 connectors. However, I have found a source for C14, C15 cables, just don't have them in yet. To keep going with this, we are implementing Eaton's intelligent power management software, and also the PDUs are smart PDUs, so they are per port monitored and switched. All right, so that gives a lot of option if we would need to, remotely power off a device or cycle power on it. It's extremely easy to do. And so we can do that either through the overall management software or right at the PDU level through the web interface. We've got some other pieces going in as well. So from Panduit, we've got some new racks. We're replacing a proprietary rack that had come in with some storage, and replacing 2 other racks as well. Along with that, we are doing dual PDUs in each of those racks. Because we are on single phase, we always try to bring 2 separate circuits into each rack. Yes, we know from experience that both circuits can go down, but it's still more common for one circuit to go down than for both. So it gives us a decent level of safety and reliability. We're also going to put in some environmental sensors as well to keep track of temperature. We do have some challenges, especially around changes in weather. Okay, so when at a campus level, they're rebalancing the cooling system because we're going from, hot days to cold days or whatever. We run into some challenges sometimes, and by watching those temps, we can be proactive and not get into a situation where we're trying to recover instead of just trying to keep things going. We are also looking towards the future in that we're updating a lot of our cabling and patch between our rows as well as within those rows. So we're going in, putting in some 100 gig rated cabling as well as Cat 6A patch panels, really to help us, again, be ready for what we need to do next. Okay, we are a real live data center, even though we're not, quote, production. And we run into the same kind of evolution problems that every data center has. So like I said, best case, if you've got the opportunity with some of your customers to go back in, at a bare minimum, you want to look at monitored PDUs. If you can get to that, getting to a port monitored PDU or kind of top of the line where you're monitored and switched per port gives you the best flexibility. You want to get some environmental monitoring in there as well. Swapping out those PDUs is a great way to do it. PDUs don't have the same challenges like surge suppressors have, but we do want to look at updating them probably at least every 10 years or so, just because components do fail. UPSs fail, PDUs fail. If you have the opportunity to be proactive, okay, if you're rebuilding a rack, great time to look at bringing in PDUs, new PDUs. But sometimes you don't really have the opportunity to do that. I'm going to hand things back over to Dan to talk about one of our other vendors that's going to give you a couple of options to bring in monitoring into existing data centers where you may not have the option to swap out those PDUs.
Thanks, Andy. And, as you're always looking for ways to monitor, and as great infrastructure investments and rehabs of environment, but sometimes you need a buddy in your environment and data centers to bring you information that might not have been captured before. And introducing, we have something from the manufacturer of Buddy, the Buddy Ohm product family that really is an add-on type solution to give you environmental monitoring, data collection, and most importantly, reporting and trending and tracking, so you can have your facility managers look at ways to reduce power consumption, to reduce their carbon waste, if you will, in the environment, and make proactive decisions on how to go and actually improve or see how their environment is being used when it comes to power and environmental facilities. Slide there. In the Buddy portfolio, there's a couple different components that are available. You do have a central hub, which is known as their Buddy OHM, which really is their resource monitoring gateway. Everything that's done from the setup standpoint is really done from an app. It's all really designed to help you with an ease of onboarding. If you have a smartphone, you use the downloadable app. It's all cloud managed, accessible through a web portal as well. And as you bring up your equipment, it communicates to the network via wired communication. They do have wireless connectivity and 4G connectivity to make it easy to be installed kind of anywhere in any facility. As you want to scale out your environment, you start adding different components like an OHM link and different sensor hubs. That gives you more and more probes and components to allow you to go and see where are the key environmental areas you want to track and find trending and reporting on, all with the ability to bring that into that cloud monitoring portal. So you can see that from a admin level component, or they also offer a nice dashboard appliance that you can actually put in. It's a little monitoring device you can actually add to a display, a TV if you will, or a signage device that can give you what's shown on the screen here, a nice dashboard that's very visual. So if you want to show and promote to your customers, maybe in a retail space or any type of venue, how you are being proactive in your power usage, your heat consumption, and all of those types of features, they actually do a good job of bringing that into a public mindset or bringing you that visibility right into a signage mentality. So again, this is something that you can add on with easy connectors, easy adapters to bring into your infrastructure and allow you to gain visibility into valuable components that you might not have seen or thought you could invest without a complete uplift or infrastructure rehab. This is a nice add-on to those brownfield discussions.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so Buddy is kind of interesting from the standpoint of they're really coming in as an IoT play. One of the kind of interesting counterpoints that I've run into is a lot of our traditional power vendors, okay, Panduit, APC, et cetera, are really positioning a lot of their sensor technologies, which, they've always looked at as as an add-on to getting their core components, UPSs, PDUs in, et cetera, and saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got an opportunity just for this sensor technology as well. All right, so that's whether you're looking at kind of a standalone solution with Buddy, or you're looking at coming back and adding some of the other functionality to whatever kind of the anchor power vendor is in that given data center. The opportunity to do a lot of this monitoring is really valuable. All right, because again, you're going to, like Dan talked about, you're going to find insights. We're putting in a bunch of sensors from the power standpoint to kind of look at our loads at different levels as well. And that's some of the stuff we're looking at going forward. So, we're also always looking now at, well, what's the next thing that we should be really looking at? And part of that is we're going to go through and really make sure that we've got some level of load monitoring at a bare minimum at the PDU level. All right, so if we've got PDUs, let me be politically correct here and say if we've got basic PDUs in a given rack, for example, because we don't have any kind of monitoring there, maybe we look at leveraging a Buddy current transformer on the whip off that PDU so we can see what the load on that circuit is. Okay, or maybe we pull it back at the panel level and track things that way. Really, we want to give ourselves a head up. We always think of it from the standpoint of, we know what the potential power load of a given piece of equipment is, and we know we're never going to be close to that. But obviously, we've got closer than we've expected because like we talked about, we've run into some challenges. Okay. One of the other things looking forward that we'd like to get implemented is some kind of real out-of-band management access. Okay, so one of the real challenges about the interruption that we have is it took out our external connectivity. All right, so the best alerting isn't going to go anywhere if it can't get out to the internet. Okay, so whether that's doing some kind of 4G or 5G bridge to the outside, for whether it's just from a critical alerting standpoint or part of our general connectivity. Or maybe looking at some kind of external watchdog or alerting service that will let us know if there is something is not available from the outside. Since some of the challenges we have is about where you put stuff, okay, we're always swapping out equipment. We're always bringing new things in. And, for the most part, it's, I will be honest, sometimes it's where it looks good. Sometimes it's where it's convenient. Sometimes it's the only place we can find room for it. Okay, and so we're looking into things like DSIM software and planning software, really to give us a little more heads up on where we should be looking at putting things. Okay, along with that, getting better at tracking and auditing what we've already got. So what is in use? What's in our rack? Do we have servers powered on that aren't actually doing anything? Okay, they were set up for something, for some project. We're no longer, we no longer need them, but we didn't go and do the cleanup and take those VMs down and take down the hosts. Okay. One of the other things is just because of what we do here, to a certain extent, we need to start looking ourselves as kind of like a data center provider or as a managed services provider, and maybe looking at tools that you would use in those use cases, again, just to get a better idea of what we've got running. As we bring in more vendors into the Business Transformation Center, a lot of that stuff is software-based. We've got back-end applications running, and what's going on, what's running where, where is that critical information? Okay, another common thing you run into is, okay, well, somebody set this up. Well, who set it up? How do you track all that information? How do you keep track of what was configured, what was the purpose for it, et cetera? All right, there's a lot of things that you've got to think about as these come out. I don't know if you noticed back on the picture of the PDUs, there's these little green LEDs. Well, that says that the outlet is on because I can remotely switch off those outlets. And, first thing I thought of, hey, well, that's cool. I can turn off all the outlets we're not using. And then I said, wait a minute. How does this stuff work in the real world? Somebody needs to plug something in. They're not going to say, hey, I need you to turn on an outlet on that PDU so I can plug something in. They're going to plug something else. Okay, because that's the way things work in the real world. So the better answer is, okay, well, let's leave those outlets on, but tie alerting to them. So if we see a load on those outlets, it creates an alert so we know that something's been plugged in. Okay, and those are the kind of things that we're looking at to keep operations moving smoothly so we can provide the level of support that the people we support, though, who we provide services to, that's all going to be available. So I'd like to thank you very much for our time today. Call out to our sponsors. Okay, APC providing our data center UPS. Eaton helped us through the little challenge that we had and put us in a much more secure place in terms of availability for our core networking. The new equipment and the updates we're getting through Panduit, as well as the value that you get out of making a little more investment and making things easy to identify with things like color-coded power cables from C2G, and then as well as Buddy, who is providing some additional monitoring and is going to give us a way to bridge the challenges we're going to have when we identify those basic PDUs that we're not having monitoring on, and give us a way to get visibility of what's going on those circuits as well. All right, I'd like to thank you for your time. We are about up to our 26 minutes, but we've got a moment or two if we've got any questions out there from the audience.
Everyone, Lauren, do we have at this time? So if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them via phone. All right, well, I think that we are all set. Andrew and Dan, thank you so much for your time today. This was a really cool session. I love that it was based on a real-life example. And thank you again to our sponsors. Of course, if you do have any questions or would like to set up a deeper dive demo of any of these solutions that are showcased today, please email us at BTC, as in Business Transformation Center, at ingrammicro.com. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.